afternoon and welcome to my Harlem Portraits, the show that talks about Black excellence in every field. Today, we have the epitome of Black excellence with us, our guest, Voza Rivers. Welcome to my Harlem Portrait.
Thank you, Maria, and welcome to the viewers.
So first of all, I want to congratulate you for your latest awards that you received. You received a few days ago the Adelco Lifetime Achievement Award, and in November you received the Ossie Davis Award in recognitions of your work as a theater producer and documentary filmmaker. And this was given to you by the National Black Writers Conference. What do these awards mean to you? And if you can explain a little bit what the Adelco is, because our viewers are also in Europe, so I want them to understand the importance of this.
Okay. So I'll start with the most recent award, which was the Lifetime Achievement Award. So Adelco, which was founded 48 years ago by a group of ladies headed by a woman by the name of Vivian Robinson, with a mission of celebrating Black theater, but more importantly, during the course of our theatrical seasons each year, they would bring audiences to see our plays. And to us, back in those days, that was extremely important to have audiences that looked like us because we were telling our stories. And there became a need for the kind of support of bringing audiences to see the work for our theaters, which was very important. That also elevated us to get a sense by listening to what the ladies were saying, traveling from theater to theater. Perhaps if they were in my theater, New Heritage, and after the show there was a conversation and Vivian would say, girl or boy, I just saw another play at Black Spectrum Theater in Queens and it was so good. They shared information. So hearing that would perk my interest to go ahead and let me go to Queens and see what they were doing. So it was an informal communications that we all enjoyed and appreciated. But when they decided to also give us awards for excellence, because they were going from theater to theater, seeing these plays, and then making a decision that we now need to honor our own because we were not being recognized by the major theatrical awards presenters. And for that, I thank Vivian Robinson, because in 1948, when I went to my first Adelco Award, I was there with my mentor, Roger Furman, who was just assuring with me the importance of connecting with these women and understanding what they're doing. Little did I know that that first opportunity to sit and see them acknowledge Black actors would become such a big event over the years. And then when you look at the awardees, it's some of, you know, the major artists who have now transcended to film, to Broadway, international work. It's just a beautiful story to tell about Adelco, and I'm just so glad that they recognize the work that I've been doing over the years. So that's what the Adelco Awards is about. It's about giving out awards for excellence in Black theater. When I think about a few weeks earlier at the National Black Writers Conference at Medgar Evers College, this was another type of award. And that award was given to me in the memory and in the name of Ossie Davis. And of course, I was very surprised because I did not think that the women of the National Black Writers Organization knew my relationship with Ozzie Davis, but they thought that the work was worthy of being associated with him. Well, when I joined New Heritage Theater in 1964, and I met Roger Furman, who was starting his theater, and he shared with me that this theater that he is now building is built on the experiences he had at the American Negro Theater that was in the basement of a library on 135th Street. And he further talked about the artists. They were all in their 20s. Some were a little older, but most of them were in their 20s, where they were members learning all the crafts of theater, from directing, playwriting, building sets, the box office, all of those things. But in addition to that, they also learned how to be activists, to articulate what was happening. So you didn't have to only see them on the stage and see how well they acted. You could also get a sense of meaning, a sense of purpose. Ruby Dee, Sidney Poitier, Harry Belafonte, Gertrude Jeanette. Ozzie Davis wasn't actually a member of the American Negro Theater, but of course we know he married Ruby Dee, and he was with another Black theater company, and on occasion he would be casted in American Negro Theater productions. So we always include him as a member. So Roger decides to start his own theater in 1964, and the people that gathered around him to encourage him to start the theater were Ozzie Davis and Ruby Dee and Harry Belafonte. And in addition to that, it gave Roger a stamp of approval that he was going to continue his theater in the tradition of the American Negro Theater, almost like a replica 20-something years later. And here I was as a volunteer seeing this. When Roger died in 1983, and I was asked to take over the theater, it was Ozzie and Ruby who said, "We're here for you. We love Roger Furman. We love the fact that you supported him all these years." Because I was a volunteer. I was never a paid member of this theater. I was always a volunteer. I had other activities that supported me. And so fast forward, Roger passes, Ozzie and Ruby put their arms around me and says, "We're there. Anytime you need us, just call us." And then now to understand that in 2020, I would be given an award in the honor of Ozzie Davis just blew me away. In South Africa, we have an organization called Committed Artists. And our philosophy is that we are training artists to be our ambassadors, to go around the world, to receive donations and dollars for what they do, come back, and then train the next group of artists with monies that they receive in other countries. Great concept. So now so then they said to me, "We're going back, we're going to write a musical, and you're going to have to produce it." I'm elated that they made that statement again. I didn't know they were in rehearsal. They said, "Voza, you have to produce it, and you have to come and find a way to come to South Africa."
Which year was this now?
Huh?
Which year was this now?
This is 88. All right, so I started out in 84, 87. Now we're talking about 88. And so they're in rehearsals in South Africa. They tell me, "You got to come to see it." And I said, "How many artists is in the play?" Because I assumed that it was going to be similar to the other plays with a very small cast because my theater only held 99 to 100 seats if I stretched it. And they said, well, don't you worry, Voza. We're coming to Harlem. Don't worry. It's going to be okay. I said, how many people? And they said, 35. I said, are you guys crazy? How can I bring 35 people to Harlem to perform on this small stage? And as luck would have it, I said, listen, I got to talk to somebody. And because of the success of the previous play that went to Broadway, Lincoln Center came to that play to see it, and I got a chance to meet the heads of Lincoln Center Theater. And Greg Moshe was the artistic director, and he said he's going to South Africa. I went to South Africa, and we saw the play. And Greg says, man, this is one of the best musicals that I've seen, and we have to do it. The we didn't include me, but the artist said, you have to work with Voza and his theater because he is going to represent us. Wow. And that really, and Lincoln Center was very pleased with that because they had seen the work before, and now they had a community-based partner that they could also work with. Exactly. And the rest is history. 5 nominations for Tonys, a musical soundtrack where Hugh Masekela, myself, and the writer, we worked on it. We were all nominated for Grammy Awards. We had a 2.5-year run on Broadway, another 2.5 years around the nation. And then we did an international company that they made me in charge of the South Africans so that I oversaw it going to Japan, going into other countries throughout Africa, and made me the head of Committed Artists US, which is a training lab for all of those artists in South Africa. And I still do that today. So presently, and this is breaking news for you, I was a year ago, last month, I was in South Africa, and the writer, producer of all of the work that I produced from South Africa was given a huge grant by the government to do a musical on the life of Nelson and Winnie Mandela, a love story musical. And so we were preparing for that, and they said, Voza, you're the producer. You know, they're telling me exactly what my role would be. I'm visiting for other reasons, and they're telling me that this just happened while I was there, and you have to head this up internationally. Well, COVID hit and everything was put on hold. And 2 weeks ago, I get a call that the government really wants to go into rehearsals soon so that this can happen sometime late 2021, early 2022, but it has to go into rehearsals. And Voza, you need to lead this opportunity to tell this story.
On top of that, music and theater, you're also engaged politically in the business, in the civil rights activity, because you are the first vice president of Lloyd Williams' Greater Harlem Chamber of Commerce, and you are the executive producer of Harlem Week. Harlem Week began in 1974, and it was supposed to be a one-day tribute to Harlem. But over these 40 years, it has evolved and it has become a month-long celebration of the Harlem's economic, political, and cultural history. And it attracts every time over 2 million attendees that come from all over the world. So congratulations for all these things you do. It seems that the pandemic hasn't stopped you, quite the opposite. How do you do all that?
First and foremost, I just want to thank those people who have taken the journey with me, and I have to go back to the beginning. I'll start with Roger Furman in 1964, because through him I learned the tools that were necessary to be able to produce. Um, I have to also thank my grandfather who grew up in the West Indies and came to this country at a very early age. And my grandfather had a major influence on me because he was a multiple task master. And I used to be out with him and about with him, going various places. He belonged to a lodge that booked talent from the Caribbean, and his eyes were failing him. I was a young kid, and I used to go with him and read the contracts for artists. I would go with him when he went to book the dance halls for the yearly galas, things like that. Didn't understand as a young kid, but I was always with him, seeing me and exposed. So I started with my grandfather, followed by Roger Furman, and then Lloyd and I, as kids, we grew up in Harlem, and we were Boy Scouts together, and we decided to be involved in our culture. We created an organization called Black Africa that took trips throughout the world, from Africa to Brazil to Europe. And we would bring our families with us and share the culture. We morphed from that into, again, creating that one-day event in 1974 called Harlem Day, where New York was at its lowest ebb, with a scourge of drug abuse and businesses closed and people leaving the community. And the Honorable Percy Sutton came and talked to us about having a one-day event that would help solidify the individuals who stayed in Harlem in spite of all of the deterioration that was around us. And that one-day event, the celebration included the renaming of 7th Avenue in honor of Adam Clayton Powell Jr., and the first day in the history of Harlem that a street was named after a person of color. That one day morphed into a week. The week morphed into 2 weeks, 3 weeks, and now a month. And for the last 45 years, we have watched Harlem Week grow from a community-based event, which it still is. It's in the heart of Harlem, all over Harlem, but it now has international and global appeal.
Tell me now what you have been doing during this pandemic. What has helped you to continue to do what you're doing, especially taking into account not only the fact that the pandemic has hurt African Americans more than any other, I call nationality, not race.
Yes.
Okay? Ethnicity. And what's next?
A series of virtual programs that we're doing. March was an event. It was on March the 8th, and we started closing down things on March the 9th. So that Sunday, for that Friday, I had produced a group from South Africa where the entire company couldn't come because they had already started restrictions on flight, but the musicians came and one vocalist, and I decided to move forward and do that show. That was on a Friday evening. That Sunday, I had a group of dancers from Cuba and musicians called Oyud Oro from Santiago de Cuba. And I knew that I wanted to do that. Now, word had already hit that this virus was happening, and these were the only two things left on my agenda that I had to do publicly. And I really felt that what I would do and not expect is to honor the commitment to showcase the artist, but with an expectation that few people would come out, and that if they did come out, I wanted to make sure that there was distance and the seating. In both instances, that Friday and Sunday, I had maximum attendance. And I held my breath. I said, because I had people separated in church pews when I only had 3 or 4 people in a pew. When I looked up, there were 8 all sitting together wanting, and I was embarrassed because I'm talking about, they told us that the pandemic is here, et cetera, et cetera. But it also showed me that people were yearning for our culture.
Yes.
And I found a way, as usual, to be able to bring these various artists to the community who want to be in this community. And my greatest aspiration is to show the community how much I love and appreciate them. And the show goes on, as they say. And that's what Harlem Week is. That's what the Chamber has been doing for the last 126 years. Okay. Yes, Lloyd is the president, and yes, I'm the first vice president, and it's a wonderful partnership. Yes, you talk about New Heritage Theater, but I couldn't do it without Jamal Joseph. Jamal Joseph is our senior executive artistic director. Jamal Joseph is a professor at Columbia University and in the graduate film program. So he and I together have done over 51 documentaries. Okay, 51 documentaries documenting organizations and individuals that we feel are important to our arts and culture. If you come to my office, you'll think you're in a museum because there's so many articles and pictures and videos of the things that we have been involved with over this 50-something year period that is all housed in the offices that we have on 135th Street. I grew up on 132nd Street.
Oh, you're just round the corner.
My office is on 135th Street. The Schomburg is on 135th Street. The school that I went to, the Frederick Douglass Academy, was on 139th Street. When I was a kid, our boundaries were, don't you go past 116th Street on the south side, and don't you go past 145th Street on the north side. That is the geographical area I grew up in, and I respected my parents, and I didn't go into other areas that they didn't give me permission to go into. And yet, from that humble beginning, I've gone around the world. And so for me, I carry the Harlem spirit with me everywhere I go. I'm just proud to be a part of those individuals who are continuing to contribute to the reputation of Harlem being a cultural capital of Black America.